Breaking news, the FA has today announced that they are flipping the English football pyramid. Debbie Hewitt, chairwoman of the FA, has said the decision was made this morning for pure bounce in it. As a result, all 20 Premier League clubs are now in the National League, and the current top 20 National League sides are in the Premier League. RIP to the 4 who didn't make it. The move will also see League 2 clubs swap with Championship clubs. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp is said to be furious with the move, as it will see his Liverpool side be forced to play even more games across the season. With only 2 clubs promoted every single season from the National League, it could take up to 10 seasons to see all former Premier League sides get out of the division. The question on everyone's lips is who's going to spend the most time in the National League, and why will it be Tottenham Hotspur? In theory, the first teams to get promoted could get back to the Premier League in 5 seasons. Can any National League side actually develop enough in that time to fend off an attack from a former Premier League club? One thing is for certain though, and that is that this is way more believable than Saudi Arabia hosting the 2034 World Cup. Wait, what? In Season 1, we've seen Man City win the title and Liverpool beat Arsenal in the playoff final. Aston Villa are the side that have really underperformed, but they did go on to beat Fenerbahce in the Conference League final to qualify for next season's Europa League. Somehow, Sasa Kaladzic ended up as the league's top scorer, with Haaland limited to just 13 goals. I'm sure he'll be able to do much better in League 2 next season, where I am sure Man City are going to dominate the league, especially as they just went on to win the Champions League final against Benfica. At the other end of the scale, Bromley are the champions of England, as they beat Gateshead to the Premier League title. Dagenham, Chesterfield and Barnet will all enter the Champions League next season, with Woking and Hartlepool in the Europa League. Sadly, Southend, Eastleigh and Wealdstone will be getting relegated. So the teams who have qualified for European football next season are going to have a mega reputation boost, and I fully expect them to be able to sign some decent players. But will it be enough to stop MK Dons, Wimbledon or Bradford from winning the title as they get promoted from the Championship? In theory, these teams will have a lot better players than those currently in the Premier League, so they should do pretty well. League 1 was not affected by the changes that we made, as they were right in the middle, so Blackpool, Bolton and Derby getting promoted is pretty realistic. I suspect all 3 of them will go on to get promoted to the Premier League next season. And there are no surprises in League 2, as Leicester, Southampton and Leeds get automatic promotion, with Blackburn following them up via the playoffs. So the race is now on for Liverpool and Man City to reach the Premier League, and Bromley probably only have 4 more summer transfer windows to try and build a team good enough to stop those 2. In Season 2, Arsenal shrug off their playoff final defeat from last season to win the title over a resurgent Aston Villa, who lost in the playoff final to Chelsea. A lot of the league's big stars are still there, as Bukayo Saka beat Alexander Isak and Ollie Watkins to win the Golden Boot. Relegated last season, Sheffield Wednesday essentially came bottom of the league, but Watford, who also came down, did okay, although they were helped by having 4 teams having a 10-point deduction for entering administration. The longer it takes for teams like Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur to get promoted, the more difficult it's going to be for them to get back to the Premier League. As expected, Man City and Liverpool dominate League 2 to get a second promotion, whilst Northampton and Exeter suffer a second relegation in a row. It's also more promotions for Leicester, Southampton and Leeds, who managed to beat Blackburn in the playoff final. However, Derby missed out on promotion to the Premier League as Stockport win the playoffs to go up alongside Bolton and Blackpool. Interestingly, Southend, who were relegated from the Premier League, avoided relegation as Accrington finished rock bottom. As for the Premier League, will Bromley retain their title, or will the promoted teams from last season go on to claim the trophy? Well, Bromley have gone from champions to rock bottom of the league, and it's a 1-2-3 for the newly promoted teams. I really enjoy the fact that AFC Wimbledon have beaten MK Dons to the title. But what on earth happened to Bromley? Well, they only made 3 signings this summer, which goes some way to explaining it, but perhaps they got distracted by having to play the likes of PSG and Juventus midweek in the Champions League. Naturally, the 5 teams who qualified for the new format finished in the bottom 5 of the league phase, but Man City came second. However, they went on to lose to PSG in the semi-finals. Hartlepool and Woking also finished in the bottom 2 of the Europa League, but Villa went on to top the league phase and then reached the final where they ended up losing. So basically, all the teams who got promoted in Season 1 dominated the following season. So will we see the same again in Season 3? Manchester United and Newcastle have escaped the National League, with Aston Villa once again falling in the playoffs. United's squad is really small, but somehow they still have a lot of world-class players like Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. Arsenal and Chelsea have dominated League 2, as they are miles better than the former Championship clubs who still make up the bulk of the division. This time it's Liverpool who have beaten Man City to the League 1 title, as they have an invincible season. I can already hear it being sung in the Kop. Champions of League 1, you'll never sing that. Liverpool's squad looks like it's barely changed since we sent them to the National League. Either these players are super loyal to the club, or all the other world-class teams around the world had no idea we put them in non-league. However, Trent Alexander-Arnold has jumped ships to Manchester City. They've also taken stars from other teams like Declan Rice, Michael Olise and Sandro Tonali. What were the odds of that happening? Probably the exact same as you subscribing to the channel right now. A dead certainty. They have lost Erling Haaland to PSG for £113 million, where Kevin De Bruyne has joined him on a free transfer. In the Championship, Southampton, Leeds and Derby have won promotion back to the Premier League. Despite being superb in the league, Leicester miss out, whilst former Premier League champions Bromley have just avoided relegation. How the mighty have fallen. This time it's MK Dons who lift the Premier League title, as Wimbledon dropped to 10th place. The other Champions League places go to last season's promoted clubs. The Dons spent £40 million this past summer on players who aren't really good enough for the Premier League, at least under normal circumstances. This time the 4 English clubs did a little better in the Champions League, coming 28th, 30th, 35th and 36th. They still didn't qualify for the later stages, but we are getting better every season. An Aldershot didn't come last in the Europa League phase. Chelsea, who won the FA Cup last season, finished in 5th, but it was Rangers who won the competition overall. Man City won the League Cup last season, which got them into the Conference League, which they went on to win. Next season, they have a chance to get back into the Premier League. In Season 4, Spurs have done it. They're back in the Football League with Brentford, as Villa miss out again. We are now at the stage where some of these clubs are being seriously affected by being in the National League for so long. Crystal Palace just avoided relegation by 3 points and have finished behind newly promoted Boston United. Plus, teams coming down have adapted better. Harrogate have finished in an incredible 12th place ahead of teams like Forest, Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United. So we might be in a situation now where teams like Palace are going to be stuck in non-league football forever. But if you can escape, it's pretty much guaranteed promotion from League 2, as Newcastle and Manchester United dominate the division. However, it is a sad moment, as Wealdstone, who started in the Premier League, will play back in the National League next season. I think this scientifically makes them the worst team in the top 5 leagues of England. Obviously, Arsenal and Chelsea have been promoted to the Championship, as they both have invincible seasons. But there is a shock in the Championship, as Liverpool haven't been promoted. Man City win the title, Leicester go up in 2nd place and Norwich win the playoffs. However, Liverpool could have gone up, but they had 12 points deducted for being in administration. The financial effects of not having the Premier League TV money, but still paying their players an insane amount of money, is taking its toll. This could really see Liverpool start to drop backwards now if they're not careful. I mean, they're still paying some of these players over £200,000 per week. I guess Man City are surviving because they sold Erling Haaland for some big money and they got high earner Kevin De Bruyne off the wage bill. Or they just have loads of spare money because they still spend £200 million more per season on wages than Liverpool do. As expected, Leeds have gone on to win the Premier League title. However, I think Stockport have done so well. They're in the Champions League places for the 2nd time. Also, somehow, the Premier League is still the most popular league in all of Europe, despite all the changes that we've made. Bolton, Stockport and MK Dons just missed out on progressing in the Champions League, whereas Blackpool did a terrible job finishing in 35th. Aldershot finished 30th in the Europa League, but Bradford actually qualified in 17th place, where they got knocked out 6-0 by Man City in the round of 16, who went on to win the entire competition. And of course, they now have a chance of winning the Premier League next season. In Season 5, Aston Villa lose in the playoffs again. as West Ham and Fulham get themselves promoted. Crystal Palace have had a bit of a comeback this season, but Luton Town become the first Premier League side to suffer a relegation. Spurs and Brentford are straight up from League Two, but it's not as clear-cut as it has been in previous seasons, as Brentford become the first former Premier League side to not hit 100 points in League Two. Newcastle pip United to the League One title thanks to their players dominating the key stats across the season. Luckily for Liverpool, they haven't let administration ruin them, and they are promoted at the second time of asking, alongside Arsenal and Chelsea, who beat former champions Bromley in the playoffs. But the big question: will anyone in the Premier League be able to stop Man City? Obviously not. Man City break the league points record to lift the title. They also topped the Champions League phase, with Leeds in 14th and Stockport and Southampton in 28th and 29th. Man City actually made the final, but they lost to Barcelona. So now we've seen the resurgence of Man City from a National League all the way up to the Premier League. I suspect we'll see them dominate for quite a while. Let's jump to season 10 to find out if anyone is still left in the National League. By this stage, if 2 teams per season got promoted, this should be the season where we see the last 2 former Premier League sides get promoted. But at this point, it's taken so long, they've lost any momentum they may have had. However, they aren't the worst teams. Luton find themselves in 15th position in the league below, although they're in the National League North and not South, because somehow there are 24 teams further south than Luton. Jumping back up to the National League, Altrincham, Wealdstone and Eastleigh all started this video in the Premier League, but now find themselves back where they started, which actually is pretty sad. Oh, I really feel for Aston Villa. They have just got promoted from League Two, which suggests they've been in the National League for quite some time, but just seem to lose in the playoffs every single season. Bournemouth are stuck in the bottom half, but Brentford have been relegated back down to the non-league football. It just seems to get so tough if you're stuck down there for 5 seasons or more. Everton just miss out on promotion from League One as the only former Premier League side in the division. Spurs are only a mid-table side in the Championship, but at least it's not as bad as Fulham, who are going back down to League One. Brighton, on the other hand, are heading back up to the Premier League with former champions AFC Wimbledon. And in the Premier League, Man City have just won their 6th league title in a row. As the first team back, they got an even bigger advantage and are running away with it. Aside from Norwich, the top 10 started this video in the National League, which shows just how good they are as they progress through the leagues. I'm also pretty impressed with Stockport County. They've become a solid Premier League side, and so have AFC Fylde, the only former non-league side to stay in the Premier League throughout this video. Now, I accidentally left this simulation running a little bit longer than planned, and so I can show you 40 years in the future, where AFC Fylde are still a Premier League team and have been joined by Season 1 champions Bromley. Chelsea have just won the title for the 9th time in the last 40 years. Newcastle have won 5, and Man City have won every other title outside of those. Potentially the most impressive thing about this video is that Bury's Phoenix Club are 16th in the Championship. Even more so, their rise happened in the last 20 seasons. They have had an impressive run through the leagues. Sheffield United and Bournemouth are the former Premier League sides still milling around League One, and Brentford are just escaping League Two. But Forest fans who are down in 14th will be finally happy to see their club out of the National League, where Burnley have just achieved their first ever promotion. Congratulations. Poor Luton though, they are still stuck down in 16th place. But it could be worse. They could be a 10-time winner of Ligue 1 stuck in France's 2nd division. So over on the second channel, I'm beginning the story of saving St Etienne. So head over there to join me on the journey.